my word, what's he done? You're kidding. Now, I don't have any commentary clips today, so I'm kind of having to make my own, right? But this is Norway chess. It's Magnus Carlsen versus Fabiano Caruana. There are tasty lineups across the board. I'll have to get to the Firuzja Gukesh game at some point. But this one I'm covering because we saw something from Magnus which you do not often see. So let's dive into this one. It's classical chess, Fabi with white, and he kicks off with pawn e4. So we get e6 from Magnus, the first surprise. So Fabi said he thought he'd be surprised, he just didn't know what the surprise would be. Now the French defence at the top level is risky, and we're going to see why when we go through these opening moves. Fabi plays the advanced variation against Magnus's classical, and now these are the moves you see as standard, and we can see that white is setting up a big pawn centre. And when you've got that space, a slightly more cramped position for your opponent, well, it's pleasant to play at this super GM level. But let's see how things unfold. So the knights develop into the game. We get bishop e3, a6, very common idea to take away this square. Knight e2, so underdevelops a knight it looks like, but it adds defense here, and it also frees the way for the c pawn. So queen b6 from Magnus, he pressures b2, also the center. Fabi goes queen to c1. He does leave the defense of this one with his queen, but he's got it covered with these three minor pieces. So Magnus just carries on developing. We see pawn c3, castle's played, and now g3 prepares the fianchetto the bishop, get the king to safety, and Magnus plays the other very thematic move in the French, pawn to f6. So you're looking to undermine the centre. It's a classic idea when your opponent's got the space. Obviously it's being done here, but it's also being done here in two different ways. And timing is everything in chess, right? So if you take on f6 now, it's not ideal because you bring this knight into the game and it's staring at that e4 square. Black's doing quite well. But coming back here, we'll see Fabi takes at the optimal moment. So first he goes bishop g2, and now from Magnus's point of view, he's played all the kind of useful developing moves. He's got to now take some action. You know, somehow he needs to release this bishop, connect the rooks. So he starts with takes on d4, the pawn recaptures, and then he throws in this check. Now after the knight blocks, what's his whole point behind this? Well, he's just vacated the b6 square and he hops this knight over. He's looking to come into c4. Now, Fabi's going to go b3 in a moment. We'll see that. But if you do it straight away, well then you've got a problem with this bishop just having a party on the dark squares, which you've just weakened, and your king isn't castle. So this is the point about timing being everything. So Fabi takes on f6, and now you can capture with the rook, but he goes with the bishop. So he's decoyed the bishop away from this diagonal, and so b3 can now be played. Just running back here, if Magnus had taken with the rook, well then Fabi, he wouldn't have gone b3, it'd be too dangerous, you know, he'd probably castle as the best move here. But okay, bishop takes. Now he can go b3 without the bishop coming to b4. It keeps the knight out of here, and Magnus finishes development and prepares to bring a rook to the c-file. So castles is played, rook a8, queen d2, comes off that dangerous file, also looks to protect these points, very natural square. And now bishop e7 bounces back, we can see the idea here, bishop b4 on the cards, and so knight e2 from Fabi. He takes the queens off the board. Now you don't want to go bishop b4 because the queen steps to the d3, d1, and actually these black pieces would all kind of be getting on top of each other. So trading is best. Plus, your name's Magnus Carlsen, right? Why would you not trade the queens, play an endgame which you're famous for, the endgame go? Well, Magnus instantly plays an inaccuracy here, and Fabi was critical of this move. So he goes rook c7. Now what would have been better? Well, immediately going bishop a3 was the top engine move here, just covering this c1 square. But Magnus's idea is really logical. Rook c7, prepare to double rooks on the only open file. But there's a tactical problem with this, as we'll see. So Fabi plays his rook to the c-file, and now the other one doubles, and can you find an excellent move which just gives Fabi this amazing initiative now? and it's not an easy one. So think pawn breaks, think freeing your position. So the move to play, and very well done if you found this, because it's not easy, is pawn f5. Now you are giving a pawn if black wants to take it, but what's the idea? Well, you just cleared the f4 square. I mean, I'll have to remember this one. It's such a nice positional idea. And bishop f4 is now the follow-up. I mean, it's a really nice idea, even if there isn't a tactical shot, just freeing up the pieces. But in this case, it's just good for white because you're winning in exchange. You know, you can't go bishop d6, the bishop drops. It's no good. So this is the tactical point. So Magnus goes bishop a3 instead. The rook moves away to the e file now because it's about to get ripped open. And now again for Magnus, there's a big threat that he has to face of bishop f4. You know, what do you do about that one? If you start trying to move the rooks, it gets really clumsy. So he goes bishop b4. Now if you move the bishop, well, he's going to take this rook. So we see Fabi chopping off, the knight recaptures, he takes on e6, bishop takes, and knight f4. But look at his pieces now coming to life. And after bishop f5, knight e5 was played, and you can really see the difference between the pieces here. These knights are just so much better than the black knights. Okay, this one's semi-active, but it's also got a defensive role covering d5. This is the problem now. So for example, if you try and take here, well then you're losing this pawn. The best line, because these two are forked, is to recapture, then you take with check, and there's this tactical problem that now your bishop drops. So this is just a flavour of the ideas. And another key one to show, well, what if you don't take here, but you hop to c2, hitting the rook, hitting the pawn? Well, then again, you just can't leave that pawn. This is a sample line, and although here both sides pick up some rooks, the problem at the end of this line is the bishop drops. And this d pawn is actually a real menace. You know, this is one sample line, the pawn gets running all the way down, and okay, an extra pawn for white plus a very dangerous passer. Still a lot of work to be done. I mean, the computer gives it 0.73 better for white, but very, very dangerous. So g6 from Magnus defends that bishop, deals with some of those tactical problems. But another great move by Fabi, really seizing the initiative with pawn to g4. So he's kicking back this bishop. Now, it comes to e4. If you go here, it's basically just very passive, even quite tactically bad in some lines. But you can see it's just blocking the scope of the rook, the knight, everything like that. Just an ugly square, ugly position. So Magnus goes to e4. He wants play, even at the cost of a pawn. At least now he's freed this square for his knight. And now Fabi does not rush to take. Good chess from him. Problem being, well, now this pawn can be taken on a2 and your advantage is not so great. So what does he do instead? Well, pawn a3 takes care of that one, and after the knight drops into d5, now he wins the pawn, clean pawn ahead and a running passer. And now things get surprising here from Magnus. So what's the top way to play? Well, it takes on f4, the rook recaptures, and knight d5. Now I can understand why he didn't go for this. I mean, you've doubled the white rooks, you're just a clean pawn down, and after something like this, you know, dropping back to the third rank, you're also covering any kind of black pressure against this pawn. So what does Magnus do instead? Well, he immediately invades with rook to c3. But this is probably the move he missed, or if he saw it, he wouldn't have realised the power of it. So Fabi finds another excellent move, top move in the position. Again, please do pause if you want to find it. So he plays knight to d7, an excellent decoying move. Now, Magnus didn't take this knight. If he did, well, the idea is you've just decoyed this one away from the defence of this one. So you can take, and this rook is now hit, and you're in trouble because there's also a threat to go knight e7 check. So whatever black does, you're losing in exchange. It's just winning for white, basically. So coming back here, taking the knight is no good. One of the top engine moves is actually taking on f4 again, but it's still unpleasant. You know, you can check, king goes, you pick up this knight, and once again, it's this d pawn running down the board, which is a big source of problems for black. I won't keep going and going on the line. Anyway, what we see in the game from Magnus is rook takes on b3, and this is weird for a player of Magnus's caliber. How often do you see Magnus blundering in the endgame? He's a tenacious defender, known as the endgame go, but this is a straight up blunder because you can take on d5. Fabi finds it, the knight recaptures, and simply rook e5 is just a killer move because you're removing this knight from the defense of the f6 square. This is the problem, and then the checks are just deadly. Now if you try and defend that knight, it's no good. Say you go rook b5 for example, well you can take here, the rook recaptures, you land a check, you're a minor piece up, just no good. And this one of course can't even come to the defense or anything like that. So we see knight c3 played, and now knight f6 check was the final move of the game. Magnus resigned. Why did he do so? Well, if you step to the f-file, you're running into huge problems with discoveries. But I'll show you this variation because when you go king g7, you kind of get driven to the f-file anyway. So d5, it's all about this pawn marching down the board once again. And the black pieces, they're just not well placed to deal with it. So you can go knight b5, looking to blockade, but then there's check. The king can come here. Now, by the way, the king has to step to the f-file. So if you come here, you're getting mated in 1. If you come here, you're getting mated in 2 with this really nice checkmate. And so coming back here, after the check, the king has to step this way, and this is where the fun begins with the discovered checks. So you can push on that pawn once again. Why would you give a pawn? Well, now it vacates that d5 square in some lines where you check. So the rook hits the knight, you know, this is the top engine line, it goes, check, king goes, check back, king back, you know, you can see the windmill thing, and then knight d5 check is a nice one, because you drive the king to g8, land this check, the king goes, and you pick up the rook. You know, having that, whoops, f6, d5, e7 check maneuver, picking up the exchange, you know, we can see the importance of sacking that d pawn. So some deep stuff, but Magnus knew it was just all over once that deadly combo of rook and knight check got landed and set up. So this is the final position. Great win by Fabi. I hope you enjoyed this one and see another epic game of chess. Do check out the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching and see you soon.